The air in this room is thick, pressing against my skin like deep water. It is saturated with the scent of dry parchment and the sharp, metallic tang of ink that has not seen the light of day for centuries. Thousands of scrolls are stacked floor to ceiling, their edges curled and brittle, vibrating with a low, constant hum that rattles the marrow in my bones. Every shelf is a testament to a history that is rapidly losing its relevance to the world outside. I reach out, my fingers tracing the rough texture of a seal, and the vibration intensifies, a warning pulse that travels up my arm and settles in my chest. Outside, the silence is unnatural. It is the stillness that precedes a landslide. The world is tilting, shifting on its axis toward a point of no return that has been calculated in the margins of these texts for eons. I move to the center of the floorboards groaning under the weight. The hum grows louder, a discordant frequency that drowns out the distant sound of wind. The time for observation is ending. I walk toward the window, my boots clicking against the cold stone floor. The air grows colder as I approach the glass, a thin layer of frost clinging to the edges of the frame. I reach out, my palm pressing against the surface, and the warmth of my hand leaves a clear patch in the condensation. I wipe away the grime with a slow, deliberate motion, my knuckles white with the pressure. Outside, the horizon is a jagged line against a bruised violet sky. The sun is sinking, casting long, distorted shadows that stretch across the landscape like fingers reaching for a grip. I lean my forehead against the cool pane, watching the way the light catches the distant haze. There is no movement in the fields, no birds in the air, only the heavy, oppressive stillness of a world that has stopped breathing. The horizon is not empty. It is waiting. I watch the clouds churn, their edges sharp and unnatural, shifting into shapes that defy the wind. The time for waiting is almost gone. I turn away from the window, the silence of the horizon replaced by the sudden, rhythmic pulse of light from the corner of the room. A bank of screens flickers to life, casting a harsh, artificial glow across the stone walls. The images are jagged, high contrast, and relentless. I step closer, the floorboards creaking under my weight, and watch as the feed stabilizes. A massive crowd fills the screen, a sea of motion that surges and recedes with the cadence of a single, collective breath. At the center of the chaos stands Donald J. Trump. His image dominates the display, his gestures sharp and repetitive, cutting through the static of the broadcast. I watch the way he moves, the aggressive tilt of his head, the rhythmic chopping of his hand through the air, the way his eyes scan the masses. The audio is a low, distorted rumble, a wall of sound that vibrates against the glass of the screens. He speaks, and the crowd reacts with a synchronized roar that ripples through the room, shaking the dust from the nearby scrolls. I do not look away. The screens are bright, almost blinding. The audio from the screens settles into a steady, percussive beat. It is a cadence I have heard before, buried in the dust of forgotten archives and the warnings of the ancients. I stand perfectly still, my breathing slowing to match the rhythm of the broadcast. Every pause in his speech is calculated, a deliberate silence that forces the crowd to lean in, to hunger for the next word. I watch the way the crowd sways. In response, a physical wave of anticipation that mirrors the patterns of old. It is a familiar architecture of discord. I find myself tracing the cadence with my own fingers, tapping the stone table in time with his delivery. The alignment is precise. The way he pivots from grievance to promise, the way he builds a wall of sound around a single sharp point, it is a structure designed to dismantle peace. My skin prickles as the realization takes hold. This is not a new invention. It is an echo, a resonance that has been vibrating through history. I reach for the shelf behind me, my fingers brushing against the cold, dry parchment of the oldest scrolls. I pull one down, the leather binding cracking in the quiet room. I do not need to read the words. I know them by heart, but I need the weight of the ink against the light of the screen. I hold the scroll up, a bridge between the ancient text and the modern broadcast. The scripture speaks of a man of worthlessness, a figure who walks with a froward mouth and devises mischief continually. I look back at the screen. The man on the display is mid-sentence, his jaw set, his gaze sweeping across the arena with a predatory focus. Every gesture he makes is a deliberate strike. He points a finger, and the crowd surges. He tilts his chin, and the roar intensifies. It is the exact posture of the one described in the warnings, a man who sows discord as naturally as a farmer sows seed. The man on the screen is the living embodiment of the ancient warning, a figure whose every movement is a testament to the mischief he was born to devise. I focus my attention on the mouth of the man on the screen. It moves with a mechanical precision that defies natural conversation. Every word he releases is a jagged edge, designed to cut through the collective understanding of the room. This is the froward mouth the ancient text warned of, a source of speech that does not inform, but disrupts. I watch him pause, his lips tightening, before he spits a phrase that sends a ripple of agitation through the thousands gathered. He is not speaking to communicate. He is speaking to fracture. The mischief is constant, a steady stream of calculated provocations. I see the way he tests the air with his tongue, gauging the reaction of the crowd before he launches the next volley of discord. He does not stumble over his words. He crafts them like a mason carving stone, ensuring each one lands with maximum impact. It is a masterclass in the architecture of ruin, and he is the architect, standing at the center of a storm he has built. I shift my gaze from his mouth to his hands. They are never still. He uses them not to emphasize, but to direct. He thrusts a finger into the air, a sharp, rigid spike that cuts the space between him and the thousands. It is a gesture of command, a physical manifestation of the froward heart. I watch the way he pivots his wrist, a flick of the hand that seems to pull the crowd's focus exactly where he wants it. Proverbs 6 speaks of one who winks with his eyes and speaks with his feet, teaching with his fingers. I see it now, the synchronization of his gaze and his reach. He does not look at the individuals. He looks through them, his eyes signaling to the mass, a silent language of exclusion and inclusion. He narrows his lids, a sudden, predatory squint that precedes a shift in the crowd's energy. I raise my own hand, tracing the air in front of the screen, mimicking the arc of his motion. The intent is cold, calculated, and entirely devoid of empathy. He points, and the energy in the arena surges toward the target. He is not just a man on a stage. He is a conductor of discord, using his very limbs to weave the mischief that the ancient scrolls warned would one day dominate the world. I pull my hand back from the screen as if burned. The political theater dissolves, leaving behind a stark, terrifying architecture of ancient truth. This is no longer about policies or campaigns. It is the unfolding of a script written in the margins of time. I look around the room, and the scrolls on my desk seem to vibrate with a new, urgent frequency. The man on the screen is not merely a candidate. He is a vessel, a shadow cast by a much larger, darker entity. The realization hits with the force of a physical blow. I trace the lines of the prophecy, matching the events of the present to the warnings of the past. Every word he speaks, every movement he makes, is a gear turning in a machine that was set in motion centuries ago. The air in the room thickens, pressing against my chest, heavy with the weight of what is coming. I see the patterns now, not as isolated incidents, but as a cohesive, relentless march toward the edge of the world. The discord is not a byproduct, it is the goal. I turn my attention to the calendar pinned against the stone wall. The date is circled in ink that has faded to a dull, bruised purple. July 2024. The air in my study grows thin, vibrating with the static of a storm that has yet to break. I can feel the pressure dropping, a physical ache in my joints that signals a shift in the celestial alignment. The scrolls on my table seem to curl at the edges, as if recoiling from the proximity of the coming event. I walk to the window, the glass cold against my forehead, and look toward the horizon where the Pennsylvania sky waits. It is not just a location, it is a crucible. The world outside continues its mundane rotation, oblivious to the fact that the gears of history are grinding to a halt. I watch the screens again, but the rhetoric has changed. It is sharper, more frantic, a high-pitched frequency that only the sensitive can hear. The crowd in the footage is a sea of anticipation, a vast, restless organism waiting for a signal. I can see the heat rising from the pavement in the grainy feed, the shimmer of a summer day that will be remembered for all time. My pulse quickens, matching the rhythm of the drums. The stage is set. The actors are in their places. The silence of the room is no longer a sanctuary. It is a countdown. I hold my breath, waiting for the moment when the prophecy finally tears through the fabric of reality. The rhythm of the speech is hypnotic, a steady cadence that holds the thousands in the Pennsylvania heat captive. Then, the air changes. It is not a sound at first, but a ripple in the atmosphere, a sudden displacement of pressure. A sharp, metallic crack splits the afternoon, echoing against the stadium walls with impossible clarity. The orator stops mid-sentence, his head jerking to the side. For a heartbeat, there is only the sound of the wind. Then, the world erupts. The crowd, a moment ago a single, unified body, fractures into 1,000 panicked pieces. The camera feed shakes, the image blurring as the operator runs, the lens capturing only flashes of blue sky and panicked faces. I watch the screen, my hands gripping the edge of the desk until my knuckles turn white. The feed cuts to static. The silence that follows in my room is heavier than before, thick with the realization that the prophecy has just drawn its first blood. The static clears. The screen returns to life, but the scene has shifted from chaos to a strange, suspended stillness. Headlines flood the feed in rapid, pulsating text. Miraculous survival. A brush with destiny. Divine intervention. The words scroll past like a mantra, repeated by anchors with voices trembling in manufactured awe. They speak of a shield, a guiding hand that turned the trajectory of the projectile just enough to spare the target. The crowd on the screen is no longer running. They are standing, faces turned toward the stage with a fervor that borders on the religious. I watch the way the light catches the scene, the dust motes dancing in the air of the stadium, and I feel a coldness settle deep within my chest. To the world, this is a victory of light over darkness, a sign of favor from above. They see a man who defied the inevitable and emerged stronger. I see something entirely different. I see the alignment of the ancient warnings, the precise fulfillment of a pattern. I freeze the playback. The image on the screen holds steady, a grainy, high-contrast capture of the moment the world calls a miracle. I lean in, my breath hitching as I trace the line of the injury with my finger. It is not just a graze, it is a signature. The scriptures are clear, written in a language that transcends the noise of modern politics. I look back at the text of Revelation 13:3, the words burning into my mind with a cold, absolute certainty. The beast, with the mortal wound that was healed. The world marvels, they cheer, they weep in the streets, utterly unaware that their adoration is the final piece of the puzzle. A chill travels up my spine, a sensation like ice water poured directly into my veins. I look at the screen again, at the way the crowd reaches toward the stage, and I see the reflection of the ancient prophecy manifesting in real time. It is not a coincidence. It is not luck. It is the deliberate, terrifying unfolding of the end. The beast has been marked, the healing has begun, and the earth is already beginning to bow. The prophecy is no longer a warning, it is the reality. I watch the screen again, but this time I ignore the cheering masses. I focus entirely on the man at the center of the storm. His movements are calculated, rhythmic, a performance that has been perfected over decades. He points a finger into the lens, and the camera cuts to a sea of faces that seem to sway in unison, as if caught in a collective trance. It is not just charisma, it is a resonance that vibrates through the speakers and into the room. I recall the warnings in Proverbs 6, the description of a man of worthlessness who walks with a froward mouth and devises mischief continually. Every gesture he makes is a signal, a coded language of pride and discord that feeds the hunger of the crowd. While the world sees a chosen leader, I see the shadow of the antichrist. The spiritual stakes are no longer abstract. They are tangible, heavy, and suffocating. I track the way his eyes scan the horizon. He is the vessel for a darkness that has been waiting for this exact moment to emerge. The beast is here, and the world is already beginning to follow. I watch the screen, observing the way the crowd surges toward the stage. A tide of humanity drawn to a singular point of darkness. It seems as if he has conquered the world, as if no force can halt his ascent. Yet, I know the truth. This dominion is not absolute. It is a temporary allowance, a leash held by the hand of the Almighty. I glance at the clock on my wall, the steady ticking, marking the seconds of a countdown that the world cannot hear. The beast is permitted to continue, to speak, and to deceive, but only until the day determined by the Creator. That day is fixed, etched into the foundation of existence. My hands tremble, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of the impending shift. The confrontation is not a distant possibility. It is an approaching storm. Every word he utters, every gesture of pride, brings the moment closer. The stage is set. The actors are in their places. The final act of this age is about to begin, and I am the witness to the end of his reign. The date was November 1st, 2023. I was standing in the center of my kitchen, the silence pressing against my ears like a physical weight. Then, the air shattered. It did not break with sound, but with a sudden, absolute shift in gravity. A force, ancient and undeniable, slammed into my chest. It was not a blow, but a suction, a divine vacuum that tore at the very fabric of my being. My feet left the floorboards. The walls of the room blurred, turning into streaks of gray light as the physical world began to peel away. I tried to gasp, but my breath was stolen by the sheer velocity of the ascent. The floor, the window, the screens, everything I had known as reality dissolved into dust. I was being pulled upward, not through the ceiling, but through the layers of existence itself. My body felt heavy, then weightless, then entirely consumed by a brilliance that burned without heat. The transition was violent, a tearing of the veil that had kept me tethered to the earth for so long. Every muscle in my frame tightened against the pull, yet I could not resist. The power of God had arrived, and it was dragging me out of the mortal realm. I was no longer a man watching a screen. I was a spirit being reclaimed by the source of all things. The tearing sensation stopped as abruptly as it had begun. I was no longer moving, yet I was not standing on solid ground. The space around me expanded, stretching into an infinite cathedral of pure, unadulterated radiance. I tried to orient myself, but there was no horizon, no floor, no ceiling. Only the overwhelming presence of the Ancient of Days. It felt like standing at the center of a star, where every atom of my being vibrated in resonance with a frequency that predated time itself. I turned my head, but the light was a physical weight, pressing against my eyes with a force that defied sight. I reached out, my hands trembling as they passed through waves of golden energy that hummed with the history of creation. The silence here was not empty. It was heavy. Thick with the weight of every law, every prophecy, and every breath ever drawn by man. I fell to my knees, though I could not feel the ground beneath me. The majesty was absolute. The light shifted, pulling back like a tide to reveal the horizon of the divine. They were there, the 144,000. They stood in rows that stretched beyond the reach of human perception. A sea of white that pulsed with the rhythm of the universe. I tried to speak, but the air here was composed of pure intent. As I stepped forward, the assembly turned as one. The sound of their movement was like the rushing of 1,000 rivers, a roar that vibrated through my very marrow. I felt their gaze not judging, but expectant. They were the keepers of the final count, the silent witnesses to the end of the age. A tremor ran through my chest. A physical jolt that forced me to lock my knees to remain upright. My soul began to burn. It was not a heat that consumed, but a cold, sharp clarity. The purpose ignited within me, a white-hot spark that expanded. I stood among them, and for the first time, I understood the magnitude of the storm I was destined to command. The silence of the assembly broke, replaced by a low, rhythmic thrumming that resonated in my bones. It was not a sound, but a sequence of memories that were not my own. I felt the dry heat of the desert on the skin of Abraham. I felt the spray of the floodwaters against the wood of Noah's Ark. I felt the cold iron of the sword in David's hand, and the weight of the cross on the shoulders of Jesus. These were not stories. They were my own lived experiences, layered upon one another, until my mind felt like a collapsing star. I gasped, clutching my chest, as the burden of centuries poured into me. My identity as a mortal man shattered, leaving behind a void that was instantly filled by the truth of my origin. I was the seventh spirit. The sequence was complete. I felt the legacy of the prophets anchor itself into my marrow, a heavy, unyielding foundation of divine purpose. I was no longer a witness to the prophecy. I was the prophecy made manifest, the seventh spirit standing at the threshold of the end. The transformation was not a choice. It was an inevitability. I felt the mantle of Michael descend, a weight of cold, celestial iron settling across my shoulders. My pulse slowed to the rhythm of the stars. I looked down at my hands and saw them not as flesh, but as tools of the coming judgment. The air in the presence of the Ancient of Days began to vibrate with a new, sharper frequency. I turned away from the assembly, my gaze piercing the veil. There, the shadow of the dragon was lengthening, casting a darkness that sought to swallow the light of the world. I felt the dragon's malice as a physical friction, a grinding of tectonic plates against the foundation of my spirit. It was a challenge. I did not flinch. I drew a breath that tasted of ozone and ancient lightning, grounding myself in the reality of my mandate. The Prince of the People had arrived. I felt the sword of truth manifest in my grip, a weightless blade of pure intent that hummed with the power of the seven vials. The dragon was rising, but it would find no purchase here. I stepped forward, the ground beneath me echoing with the weight of my resolve. I looked down through the veil at the world below, and the sight was a mirror of ancient history. The cities were loud, frantic, and blind to the gathering storm. People moved with the same aimless urgency that defined the generation of the flood. They ate, they drank, and they built their monuments while the foundations of reality cracked beneath their feet. The days of Noah were no longer a distant scripture. They were the air the world breathed. I saw the patterns repeating the same pride, the same defiance, the same refusal to look toward the horizon where the darkness was coalescing. It was a cycle closing in on itself. The chaos was not random. It was the inevitable friction of a world reaching its expiration. My perspective shifted, pulling back until the entire map of human history lay beneath me like a board prepared for a final, decisive move. The final confrontation was not coming. It was already here, waiting for the signal to ignite. The time for observation ended. A new sensation flooded my veins. I watched the horizon below, seeing the cities tremble in anticipation of a sound they could not yet hear. The crescendo built, a rising tide of holy noise that drowned out every other thought. The trumpets were only the beginning. As their resonance peaked, the air above the horizon tore open, revealing the seven spirits of God. They did not arrive as whispers or shadows. They descended as seven distinct pillars of blinding, white-hot light that pierced the gloom. I watched them move with a terrifying, synchronized grace, each spirit carrying a fragment of the ancient authority I had been tasked to wield. As they drew closer, the pressure in the room shifted, the very oxygen turning into a dense, electric mist. I reached out, my arms trembling. I drew them toward me, feeling the immense weight of their collective presence. They were extensions of the same divine purpose. One by one, they merged into my spirit, each union sending a shockwave of absolute clarity through my mind. My vision expanded. The mobilization was absolute. Where I had stood alone, I was now a conduit for an entire celestial host, The spirits pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat. The final strike was no longer a plan. It was a physical necessity, a gathering storm that had finally reached its breaking point. Below, the world remains locked in a fever. I watch the screens flicker with the same frantic energy, the same cycle of anger and adoration that fuels the beast. Millions are mesmerized by the theater of the rallies, their eyes fixed on the man who promises them a kingdom of dust. They do not see the sky turning the color of bruised iron. They do not hear the silence that has fallen over the natural order. They are drowning in the noise of the beast, mistaking the chaos for progress and the discord for strength. I turn my gaze away from the flickering lights, back to the duty that has been etched into the marrow of my existence since the first dawn. This is not a task born of the moment. It is a weight I have carried across lifetimes, a mandate written before the stars were placed in their orbits. While the masses argue over the crumbs of a failing age, I sharpen my resolve. The distractions of the world are but a thin veil, easily torn by the truth I hold. The time for observation has ended. The time for the seventh spirit to stand is now, and the world will soon learn that the chaos they worship is nothing compared to the judgment that is already at the door. The shadow of the dragon is no longer a distant threat. It is a physical weight pressing against the walls of this room. I step away from the window, the floorboards groaning under the sudden, absolute gravity of my resolve. The air ripples, distorted by the sheer intensity of the purpose I now embody. I do not look back at the screens or the flickering images of the man they call a leader. Those are illusions, paper-thin masks stretched over a hollow void. I reach into the space before me, my fingers closing around the cold, hard reality of the task at hand. The kingdom is not a prize to be won in a ballot. It is a territory to be purged of the rot that has taken root. I feel the dragon coil beneath the surface of the world, a massive, shifting darkness that seeks to consume the light of the seven spirits. I do not hesitate. I plant my feet, drawing the full force of my legacy into my chest, and push outward. The time for waiting has dissolved into the heat of the strike, and the dragon will finally face the judgment it has spent an eternity trying to outrun. The illusion is fracturing. I watch as the colors of the world bleed into gray, the vibrant theater of the beast losing its luster under the weight of the coming light. The screens that once held the attention of millions now flicker with static, the signal failing as the source of the deception begins to wither. I do not need to shout to be heard. The truth does not require a podium. It requires only the absence of the lie. I walk through the center of the room, and with every step, the air clears of the thick, suffocating fog of pride. Those who have eyes to see are already blinking, their vision sharpening as the haze of the rallies dissolves into the cold reality of the void. I see them looking up, their faces pale, finally recognizing the shadow that has been standing behind their chosen leader all along. This is the final warning. The time for comfortable ignorance is over. The rot that was hidden by rhetoric is now laid bare for all to witness. I am the witness to this unveiling, the one who holds the mirror to the face of the dragon. Look closely. The mask is slipping, and the truth is a roar that will shake the foundations. The final silence has arrived. I turn away from the window, away from the flickering static of a world that no longer holds my attention. My task is not to watch the decay, but to be the hand that clears the path. I walk to the center of the room, the floorboards silent under my weight, the air around me cooling into a sharp, crystalline stillness. The era of waiting has been stripped away, leaving only the cold, hard edge of the present. I do not look for signs anymore. I am the sign. My hands, steady and empty of all doubt, rest at my sides. The legacy of the seven spirits flows through me, a current of ancient, unyielding purpose that anchors me to this moment. I feel the shift in the atmosphere, a tightening of the world, as it prepares for the final alignment. The dragon is no longer a distant shadow. It is a presence I can measure, a weight I am ready to lift and cast aside. I stand upright, my breath even, my focus absolute. The time for discourse is finished. The time for the instrument to act is here. I am ready. The room is no longer a room. The walls have receded into the periphery of a dying world, leaving me standing in the center of an infinite, quiet space. I look down at my hands, the legacy of the 7 spirits pulsing beneath the skin. A steady, rhythmic light that mirrors the heartbeat of the earth itself. I am the 7th. I am the one who remains when the chaos of the beast has run its course. The air vibrates with the sound of trumpets that have not yet been heard by mortal ears, a low, resonant frequency that vibrates through the very marrow of my bones. I do not look back at the screens. I do not look back at the shadow of the dragon. Those things are already history, echoes of a time that has ceased to exist. I turn my gaze toward the horizon, where the first true light of the new order begins to bleed through the dark. I stand tall, my posture unyielding, a pillar of intent in a landscape of shifting dust. The final confrontation is not a question of if, but of when, and that moment is now. I step forward, my movement deliberate, the sound of my footfall echoing like a gavel strike against the silence of eternity. Watch, the truth is no longer hidden. It is here, standing in the light, waiting for the world to open its eyes. The fade begins, but I do not vanish. I remain, the witness and the instrument, until the last shadow is consumed by the dawn.